Kathleen gathered every ounce of strength left she had in her body to celebrate her girls aging into toddlers. She smiled through the unbelievable pain she was in. Esmeralda's toddler trait is inquisitive. This was the last birthday that Kathleen would be celebrating Francis as the baby of the family, so she savored every moment of it. It was a bittersweet moment for her as a mother. Francis's toddler trait is she hates the outdoors. Thankfully, they were about to leave the farm for good. Joseph was notably absent from the twins' birthday celebration. He came to apologize to Mia for his ghastly wife's actions. Mia said nothing and instead kissed him for the first time. She had no time to waste. Kathleen suffered through each contraction all alone. Her husband was off doing God knows what, but she couldn't worry about that right now. Something was wrong with this labor, and she was frightened. Her only concern was to deliver this baby healthy. Joseph and Mia were blissfully unaware of Kathleen's labor, instead finally enjoying each other's touch and kiss. Kathleen focused on her breathing as she sat in the bed that she shared with her husband. Joseph was an awful human and husband, but she felt his absence. He was so gentle and compassionate with her when she delivered the girls, and she needed that right now. Mia and Joseph made love for the first time. This was the moment they had longed for since the day they laid eyes on each other. Kathleen felt the urge to push, but she knew something was very wrong. Blood was normal for childbirth, but not the amount that she was losing. Her vision blurred and she felt faint. Her only goal in this moment was to deliver a healthy baby regardless of the personal cost. Her girls were there with her and were scared that something was terribly wrong with their mummy. She tried to console them the best that she could, but she had to focus on the baby she was attempting to birth at that moment. She felt herself crowning and pushed with every last ounce of life that was in her body. She could feel herself slipping away, as she would not allow it until her healthy baby was crying in her arms. She gave birth to a healthy baby girl who she named Victoria because it meant victorious. Just like her last delivery, a familiar feeling to push came immediately after Victoria's birth. There were two babies, another girl. She named her Isabel because it meant beauty pledged to God. Mia and Joseph made love to one another until the sun rose in the morning. Little sleep was had by either, but their insatiable appetite for the other had finally been satisfied. Kathleen cuddles her babies, two more perfect girls. She clung to every moment with her daughters because she was bleeding out and would not get a chance to hold them again. She felt no pain anymore. Her vision was blurred except for when she was looking at her children. It was unusual, but the love of a mother can do miraculous things. If the love for her children could save her life, she would be healed. She told her four girls repeatedly how much she loved them. She told them to never minimize themselves for a man and to be strong women. They were too young to understand, but she wanted them to hear her words at least this one time. Tears fell from her face as her heart rate plummeted and her breathing slowed. Many things in her life turned out differently than she had imagined, but she would not change a thing because she became a mother to the most incredible children. Kathleen slipped away completely. She was gone. Esmeralda and Francis cried for their mother to wake up. She was still, unmoving. They were scared, and their daddy and auntie were not there to comfort them. The girls stayed by their mother's body all night until their father returned home in the morning. Joseph was shocked and dismayed by the scene he walked into after his perfect night with Mia. He had no affection towards his wife, but he would never wish death upon her. He felt immense guilt for what he had done. He now had 4 daughters, and they were now motherless. The newborn twins, Victoria and Isabel, would never have memories of their mother. They would never know how much she loved them and gave her life for them. The eldest twins fell into a routine together. Their daddy and auntie were either too busy with each other or their sisters to pay much mind of them, so they learned to be self-sufficient at a young age. They comforted each other at bedtime and encouraged the other to sleep. Each twin would be lost without the other. They were each other's best friend. It was time to finally age the younger twins up into infants. Victoria was the eldest of this set of twins, so she aged up first. Victoria's infant trait is cautious. Isabel is the current baby of the family, so she aged up after her sister, Kathleen's last baby. Isabel's infant trait is also cautious, just like her sister. Joseph and Mia continued to play house for another year or so. Joseph was still mourning the loss of his children's mother, and he felt that it was too soon to dishonor her memory by jumping into a union with her sister. He very much longed to be wed to Mia. Enough time had passed since the demise of his late wife, and he was ready. He knew Mia had been ready for a long time. She has given him more grace than he deserves. He went to town weeks ago to purchase a ring since his mother's ring was buried with Kathleen. His mother's ring was too old and small anyway for a woman as amazing as Mia. She needed to be dazzled for all she was put through in the last years. He would finally propose to the love of his life. He had no plans, so he would do what felt right. The moment came weeks later, right before they were headed up for bed. They were cuddled up by the fire, and Mia looked radiant as the fire illuminated her features. He asked for her hand in marriage. Mia thought he would never ask and accepted without a second thought. She had waited for this moment forever and couldn't believe it was finally happening. The events following the proposal took a spicy turn. Their romance and affection with one another would soon no longer be frowned upon in the eyes of the Lord, but one last unwed night together wouldn't damn them more. Now that Mia was engaged to be married, she took a more hands-on role in Kathleen's daughters' lives. She would soon be their stepmother, and she wanted to have a good enough relationship with each girl. She hoped that they would soon have children of their own, so the girls would take a back seat and they could focus on their children together. Esmeralda and Frances liked their auntie well enough, but did not feel much warmth from her. She kept them fed and bathed, but they didn't receive love from her. They got their warmth and love from one another. They talked about their mummy often. They wished that she were here with them instead of their auntie. They did not really understand what going with Cobb meant, but their daddy made it clear that mummy wasn't coming back. Joseph allowed himself to feel like a man again and suggested that he work out in the fields instead of Mia. She was a woman and her job was caring for the children. Joseph much preferred to get his hands dirty in the fields. Even cleaning the barns and tending to the animals gave him his manhood back. He had felt emasculated when he cared for his girls. It was simply not his job. He didn't feel a purpose when he was inside with the girls. Since he was a young boy, all he has done was work in the fields and be a caretaker for the cows, chickens and llamas. It was what he knew best, and he felt great pride when he produces a healthy harvest or sells the animals' produce. As their wedding date approached, Mia began to feel ill. At first, she thought it was just pre-wedding jitters, but when it didn't pass, she knew Joseph's air was growing inside of her. Something her sister could never do. Mia missed her monthly a few days before their wedding on the farm. Her wedding dress fit snugly on her stomach, but she forced it to fit. She was getting married today, and she wouldn't allow an inconvenient baby bump to ruin the best day of her life. Joseph had waited for this day since the first moment he had laid eyes on the pretty one. They had many obstacles along the way, but they were finally there, celebrating their union of holy matrimony. Kathleen blessed him with their beautiful daughters, but it was always a loveless marriage. He was finally able to wed for love. Mia is the love of his life, his reason for living. Mia felt so blessed to have finally won the affections of the handsome farmer, the man of her dreams. They were made for each other and were meant to be. She couldn't wait to disclose that she was not only with child but was sure that it was his heir. Finally, now introducing for the first time, Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Bennett. Mia was finally a Bennett, her one true family name. The newlyweds slowed dance in front of the fire after the children went to bed. They soaked up every second of their wedding day and night. They wanted to remember this moment for the rest of their lives. It was perfect in every way. Mia was about to make this momentous day even more special for Joseph. After they finished kissing and slow dancing, Mia asked Joseph to sit with her, that she had an amazing announcement to make. She shares the joyous news that she was with child. She told him of a dream she had the night prior of a little boy waddling in the fields with his father. She was confident that she was pregnant with his heir. The heartfelt reaction of her now husband single-handedly converted her into a family-oriented woman. She couldn't wait to see Joseph hold his heir in his arms for the first time. Life on the farm continued as usual after their quiet wedding ceremony. Joseph demanded that Mia not lift a finger since she was carrying his heir. He did all of the child rearing on top of his duties out in the fields. His days were long and exhausting because he had 4 very vivacious daughters, but he didn't mind. He wanted to spend these last few months before his son was born with his girls. His only priority once his son was born would be to mold him in his image. His son would be the one to take over the farm once Joseph was too old. He loved his girls, but this was the child he had been waiting for his whole life. He cared for his daughters, but they had nothing of value to offer him aside from marrying into wealthy families. He would spend time with them only to ensure that they were lovely enough to be courted. So he would be a loving father while they were young, and once they were of age to be courted, he would stop at nothing to obtain for dowries. He looked at them as nothing but a paycheck. What was owed to him? The eldest twins had never felt more neglected than they did now. And he was supposedly having a ball which would make their existence in this house even more arbitrary. They always played alone and received 0 love from their caregivers. Mia used the girls as practice children for when her actual child came into the world. She wanted to get all of the mistakes out of the way with the girls so she would be the perfect parent for her son. Only her son mattered in the end. Joseph had realized the error in his ways. He had been prioritizing the younger twins and neglecting the older ones. He allowed a small portion of his day to be dedicated to Esmeralda and Francis. Mia loved being the homemaker. She never understood why her sister despised the cooking and cleaning. It brought her great joy to cook her husband's meals and to make sure he has a tidy home to come in to after a long day in the fields. She enjoyed being the one who cooked all of the meals. Her food tasted better anyway. She knew exactly the ingredients she put in her food. She wanted her unborn baby to receive all the nutrients. She insisted on being able to perform her wifely duties despite Joseph's objections. He worked so diligently and efficiently in the fields, and she wanted to do her part to alleviate some of his workload. She wasn't lazy and ungrateful like her sister was. Although Joseph's laundry was filthy, she didn't care about cleaning his clothes. They were only dirty because he was such a hard-working man. He was in the fields or tending to the animals from sunup to sundown. The least she could do was clean his clothes. Joseph treated his wife like royalty. If she had worked hard during the day, he massaged her back to ensure she wasn't uncomfortable or in pain in any way. He was happy he finally had a wife that wanted to be around him. They spent every free moment together, and conversations never became dull. He was able to be affectionate and shower his wife with praise and love. Her only concern was his nasty habit of smoking those nasty cigarettes. They smelled up the house and made her sick to her stomach. Towards the end of Mia's pregnancy, She began to feel stir-crazy. She was about to be in the house tending to a newborn at all hours of the day, so she wanted to enjoy the fresh air. Her excuse was feeding the animals. If she was honest, she didn't like the animals much. They were smelly creatures that did nothing but get dirty and cost them money. Mia began to feel exhausted and overworked during her last trimester. Joseph picked up her slack with the children. She only asked one favor of Joseph. They only had 3 bedrooms in the main house, so their new baby would not have a room to stay in. She insisted that Francis and Esmeralda should move into her old space once they aged up into children. Joseph agreed and made them new beds. Mia began nesting for their son to come into the world. Everything was falling into place. Only one set of twins would be in the main house, so she wouldn't have to bother with them much. As for the younger twins, she would figure something out. As her due date was quickly approaching, she felt great peace with her life. She has the love of her life and a strong egg growing in her belly. Soon the girls would be old enough to leave her alone. As she thought of all of the good things in her life, her water broke and the sharp contraction rips through her body.